Today on the Commanders Report, I'm going to be talking about my list of free agent targets for the Washington Commanders. We'll be going over every single position of need. The list is quite extensive for the Washington Commanders heading into NFL free agency this year. And I'll let you guys know the top players that you should be keeping your eye on when free agency begins next week. Before we get into the content today, let me know who your guy is down there in the comments section. Name a player that is going to be a free agent this year that you want the Washington Commanders to sign this year. Let me know down there in the comments section to kick off today's show. And with that, let's go over the team needs that the Washington Commanders will have this offseason. In my opinion, the list is extensive because of all the free agents that this team does have this year. I think they need to get offensive tackle, at least one for sure, and then they probably need to get two, at least in my opinion. They need to find a new starting left guard. I think Nick Allegretti is fine as a depth piece, but I'm not sure if he's exactly up to the standard that the Commanders want. Edge rusher, they need to sign at least one edge. Defensive tackle will be a need with Jonathan Allen likely out the door here. They need to add a cornerback. They need to get a strong safety. Middle linebacker, tight end. They need some depth at wide receiver after the Deebo Samuel trade, and then a backup quarterback. So right now, after the Deebo Samuel trade here, guys, after you take on the money that you're going to have to pay him this year, the Commanders' effective cap space this year is now a little bit over $58.4 million, which is still a lot of money to use in free agency. Plus, I'm really, really hoping that this team releases and cuts Andrew Wiley before the start of NFL free agency next week to save this team another $7.75 million and get them around the $65 million range to spend on free agents. So let's go with the first team need that we talked about here, which was the offensive tackle position. Now, personally, I would like to get two offensive tackles this offseason, whether that be free agency or draft. Ronnie Stanley is the guy that I really, really want to go get, guys. I think I really cherish his skill set as a hardy veteran that has played on successful teams before, and I really cherish his skill set as somebody that has protected mobile quarterbacks before. Lamar Jackson, of course, is one of the most dynamic rushers in the game. So is Jaden Daniels. I really cherish Stanley's skill set in that regard, so I really hope that they make a big offer for him to get him in a Washington Commanders uniform. But the other options, Tyron Smith, kind of a shorter-term option if they want to go get him. Dan Moore Jr. has a lot of experience there in Pittsburgh. Not the best player in the world, if I'm being completely honest with you, but he does have a lot of starting experience. Cam Robinson is somebody that I think is going to be way too expensive. I'm not willing to pay him over $18 million if that's the price tag, but he also has some starting experience. And Morgan Moses, if you want to go out and get a right tackle to replace Andrew Wiley, I think that Morgan Moses is a super reliable option that you could look at for 2 years, $5 million per season. At least that's what Pro Football Focus projects for his next deal. As for the left guard position, I would personally move Brandon Coleman there, all right? Like, I think that he's more built to be a guard in the National Football League. Now, he's got the physical tools to potentially play tackle. That's why this team drafted him as a tackle and played him as a left tackle last year, but I think his hand placement is all over the place. I don't think he brings any sort of consistency to the position. Now, who knows? Maybe that they feel like with another offseason, he can be this team's franchise left tackle. I'm a lot more pessimistic in Coleman's prospects as a tackle in the National Football League, but I think he could be a really good guard for this football team moving forward. And, you know, if it's an outside option at left guard, go get somebody affordable, all right? I don't think that you need to be spending $20 million, $15 million on an offensive guard. There's some good affordable options out there on short-term contracts, guys like Kevin Zeitler, formerly with the Detroit Lions, James Daniels, who's coming off an injury, but he's a really good player. Brendan Scherf is somebody that I would really consider bringing back here to the Washington Commanders. You can play. It's a one-year rental. I like that fit right there. Will Hernandez is somebody that has played for Cliff Kingsbury in the past. You got to keep your eye on him. And then Dalton Reisner is another potential kind of affordable option for the Washington Commanders if they want to go free agency to fill the left guard position. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. How many offensive linemen do you think the Washington Commanders will sign in free agency this year? Do you think they sign one? Do you think they sign two? Do you think they sign three? Do they sign any at all? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. So now let's talk about the defensive trenches now, because I think that the Commanders need to add at least two edge rushers this offseason. Right now, they got Dorrance Armstrong under contract, and really that's about it. Cleveland Ferrell's a free agent. Dante Fowler Jr. is a free agent. Now, I think that a big X factor in terms of what the Commanders are going to do is what is their interest level in trading for Myles Garrett, all right? Like, I think that what I would do if I were the Commanders is I would sign one starting caliber edge rusher that's not like maybe a high-end guy, maybe more of a mid-level starter at the edge rusher position in free agency so that I can keep the door open to potentially trade for Myles Garrett at any point during this offseason before the NFL draft. Somebody that I would be interested in bringing back is Dante Fowler Jr. His Pro Football Focus projected contract right now is just a one-year, $5.5 million deal. Fowler made some big plays for this defense last year, and I would be in favor of bringing him back for another season. But if you wanted to get somebody outside of Fowler here and you just want to sign one free agent edge rusher, Khalil Mack is certainly somebody that this team can look at. His current projected contract is $22.5 million over 2 seasons. Joey Bosa is somebody that's a big name but has dealt with a lot of injury and production issues lately. His projection is 1 year, $12 million. And then also Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, and DeMarcus Lawrence are players that I think could come in right away and be impact players. Now, I would say the bigger names on this list and the more expensive pieces on this list, Khalil Mack, Josh Sweat, potentially Hassan Reddick, those are players that you would get if you don't think you're going to be trading for Myles Garrett, and you are expecting those guys to be your number one edge rusher heading into 2025. And if you don't land Myles Garrett, all right, so with this plan that I have here, guys, that you sign a free agent, and then you try to draft Myles Garrett, if you can't get him by the draft, just spend an early draft pick on an edge rusher that could be your number one guy. That's probably what my plan would be. That way you keep your options open in terms of a Myles Garrett trade all the way up to the big day in Green Bay. And if you can't get something done by then you address this position in the early rounds of the NFL draft. Then we get to defensive tackle here, where obviously Jonathan Allen is probably not going to be on this team next year, and I want them to go affordable at this position as well, because you do have Daron Payne, and then you just spent an early round draft pick on Johnny Newton last year, who this team believes in, so you're more looking for somebody that's going to be a rotational starter. Somebody like a Levi Onwuzurike, who's going to be less than $10 million, according to Pro Football Focus. Calais Campbell, somebody that is probably trying to win a Super Bowl before he retires. Jaron Reed from the Seattle Seahawks and Tershawn Wharton from Kansas City. Both of those guys are very good rotational pass rushers from the interior, and same thing with Ty Tart, all of which I think would be really, really good fits with the Washington Commanders. Also, I think that this team should consider bringing back Sheldon Day, who I thought had a really good season with this club last year. So coming up here, we got more free agency targets, cornerbacks. We've got a bunch of different other positions that we still need to talk about on today's show. But before we get into the rest of today's content, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Fanatics, where you guys can go to chatsports.com/Commanders shirt to get this Commanders shirt in your closet today. It's on sale on the Fanatics website right now, guys. And every time you use our link, chatsports.com/Commanders shirt, and you make a purchase, Fanatics sends us part of the proceeds to help out our show, help us get new equipment, help us get improve our graphics, all the different stuff that keep the lights on here at Chat Sports. It's all thanks to your guys' contribution. So if you're looking to get some more Commanders gear in your closet today, go to chatsports.com/Commanders shirt and make a purchase. So now let's talk about cornerback, because this is a big position for the Commanders to address, but it's going to be a bit tricky because you don't know if they're going to address it via free agency or the draft, and you don't know if they're going to be looking for an outside or a nickel corner. It's all going to depend on what they want to do with Mike Sainristil, whether they're going to keep him on the outside where he played last year, or if they're going to kick him inside and play the nickel position, which is what he was drafted to play. My best guess here is that they're going to sign a veteran on the outside, all right? I think that they want Mikey to play in the slot ideally, and I think that there's a lot of good outside cornerback options that are really solid veterans at this position that I think that they will be considering. You take a look at some of the more expensive cornerback free agency targets to pair with Marshawn Lattimore on the outside. Charvarius Ward, a former 49er that might have a connection to Adam Peters. Got to keep your eye on him. 3 years, $14.5 million per year is what is expected to be his contract. DJ Reed, similar contract, 3 years, $14 million per season. If you want to get somebody younger, you can get Byron Murphy Jr., who's expected to get $17.3 million over 3 seasons, but then also Carlton Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. are also very good veteran options that I think the Commanders should be looking at this offseason. Then you look at the guys in the slot, and let's say they want to keep Mike Samerstrill on the outside. Perfectly fine with that. There's plenty of good slot options in free agency this year as well. Jordan Lewis, we've seen a lot of these Cowboy players follow Dan Quinn to the Washington Commanders. We could certainly see Jordan Lewis, who is a more affordable slot cornerback option. I really like Lewis's game, super sticky in man coverage, perfect fit for Dan Quinn's system in the slot. Can get him for a 2-year, $2.3 million per season contract, according to Spotrac, but then also Nate Hobbs and Mike Hilton, a little bit more expensive, but also among the best slot corners in the game today. For me personally, I think that they're going to go with somebody on the outside, and they're going to spend some money to get somebody to pair with Lattimore on the outside. Then we get to strong safety here, where I think the Commanders will probably bring back Jeremy Chin. I mean, back in the day, Jeremy Chin had a perfect 10 out of 10 relative athletic score because of his ability to move, along with his ability to be a big guy, 220 pounds, as a true box safety, strong safety. He fits the role of the Cam Chancellor role in this Dan Quinn defense to a T. And right now, Pro Football Focus projects that the Commanders can lock him up for the long term, 3 years, just $7.5 million per season. That is a steal as far as I'm concerned. And out of all the other safety options at the Commanders' disposal this year, I think Chin fits what they want at strong safety the most. I mean, all these guys, a lot of these guys are good players. I'm a big fan of Holland. I'm a big fan of Hufanga. Harrison Smith has been one of the best safeties in football for a long time. Justin Simmons is still a very good player, but none of these guys compare to Chin's athletic profile that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. really do cherish here in Washington. Chin wants to come back. I do believe that. I think you can get him for a pretty decent price tag. So for me, if I'm the Commanders, I'm bringing him back. Speaking of players that I would bring back this offseason, Bobby Wagner, this kind of, the green dot, the captain in the middle of the defense. He was so big for this defense's development last year throughout the season, and he's going to be pretty darn cheap, guys. You can get him for about a 1-year, $5 million contract, according to Pro Football Focus. Now, there's other options at inside linebacker that they could potentially look at. Dre Greenlaw is coming off an injury, but he's going to be relatively affordable. Right now, Pro Football Focus projects just a 1-year, $6 million contract for him. He's a speedster. Levante David has been one of the best middle linebackers in football for a very long time. I kind of think he's going to go back to Tampa because that's where he's played his entire career, but maybe he'd want to come and try to win a Super Bowl here in Washington. Robert Spillane plays a very similar style of football to Bobby Wagner, kind of a bigger body, a little bit more lumbering, maybe not as good in coverage, but he's a very good player, great blitzer, really good in run defense. Terrell Dodson and then Orlandon Roberts are also some players that can fill Bobby Wagner's role in this defense if he doesn't come back. Then at the tight end position, I do think they're going to bring in a veteran of some sort. They just spent an early draft pick on Ben Sinnott, and I do think that they're going to want to pair him with a legit kind of established veteran as well. It could be Zach Ertz. They bring him back. Right now, Pro Football Focus says you can bring him back for a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. That's certainly something that I would consider. But also, Mike Gesicki. I mean, this is an offense here in Washington that likes to pass the football a lot, and that's the type of system that Gesicki thrives in. He's one of the best route-running tight ends and pass-catching tight ends in all of football. Pro Football Focus thinks that the Commanders can get him for a 2-year, $6 million per season contract. These are the two guys that I would consider in free agency if I were Washington. And then when it comes to the wide receiver position, after trading and really paying for Deebo Samuel and in taking on his contract, I don't expect Washington to make a trade for another big-name wide receiver. I don't expect them to sign a big-name free agent at wide receiver either. I think they're going to address the number 3 receiver spot in the draft this year. But I do think they're going to sign some depth. And I think that the way that they're going to do that is they're going to bring back at least one of the receivers that they had on this team last year that already have chemistry with Jaden Daniels, and if called upon, can be a very good contributor for the Washington Commanders on offense. Somebody like Alameda Zaccheaus, De'Ami Brown. I think Noah Brown, Jamison Crowder, and KJ Osborne are probably gone. But if you bring back either Zaccheaus or Brown, I'd be happy with that wide receiver depth, and I think that would be a good addition for this team in 2025. Then when it comes to a wide receiver, I do think that you draft a young wide receiver because right now you got a 30-year-old Terry McLaurin, and then you've got Deebo Samuel, who's almost 30 years old, right? So those are your two veteran pieces, Now I want them to go out and get somebody that could potentially be their number one wide receiver in the future when those guys eventually move on and start building up some of that chemistry with Jaden Daniels. I don't think Luke McCaffrey is gonna get there. I think Luke can eventually become a good slot piece and weapon for this team, but I don't think he's a true number one. I think that early in the draft, this team is probably going to be going edge rusher if they don't get Myles Garrett, and then wide receiver to pair with Deebo Samuel and, of course, Terry McLaurin. Then the final position we got to talk about today, quarterback, and it is backup quarterback because Marcus Mariota is a free agent, and I would love to bring back Mariota. But we'll talk about him in a little bit. I think he's going to have some interest elsewhere. But then Trey Lance, Joshua Dobbs, Tyler Huntley, and Cooper Rush are all players that I think could potentially be good fits. Playing behind Jaden Daniels. Of course, Cooper Rush is not as mobile as Lance, Dobbs, or Huntley are. But Rush is somebody that has played with Dan Quinn. He's familiar with him, of course, coming from the Cowboys. So that's at least an option to keep in mind as well as one of the best backups in the National Football League. Now, let's talk a little bit here about Mariota because I hope he's back. I mean, he played great in relief of Jaden Daniels in 2024. And if, God forbid, Daniels goes down with a season-ending injury next year, Marcus Mariota is about as good as you're going to get if you're the Washington Commanders in terms of a backup option that has a ton of experience in your offense now. But I think that there is going to be opportunities for Mariota potentially to get QB1 work or at least competition to get QB1 work elsewhere. Teams like the Las Vegas Raiders with his former head coach in college there with Oregon. Chip Kelly is their new OC. The New York Giants, who knows what they're going to do. I think they're probably going to get Aaron Rodgers, but if they miss out on Rodgers, they miss out on some other players, they could think about Marcus Mariota. Indianapolis is a team that's trying to bring in competition for Anthony Richardson. I think Mariota fits really well with what Indianapolis is looking for right now. The New York Jets are looking to sign kind of a lower contract type of potential starter. Mariota certainly fits that bill as well. And then Cleveland, with how much money they're paying Deshaun Watson, they're looking to not pay too much for their starting quarterback in 2025. I think Mariota fits with the Cleveland Browns as well. And like I said, guys, I think Mariota has a chance to get that number one QB job, or at least an opportunity to earn that job from another team this year. So unfortunately, I think that the Commanders, there's a pretty darn good chance that they're going to be looking for a new QB2 here in free agency. So fill in the blank for me down there in the comment section. Marcus Mariota will be a blank in 2025. Will he be a Commander? Will he be a Jet? Will he be a Colt? Will he be a Raider? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section, and that'll be it for today's show, guys. Make sure you type Real One down there in the comment section for the Real One roll call here. If you made it to the end of the show, that makes you a real one. We want to know who the real ones are. Make it to the end of the show here, so make sure you type those real ones. Finish out today's show. Click that subscribe button if you want more Commanders coverage leading up to NFL free agency and, of course, breaking news coverage every time the Commanders make a signing next week. We will have you covered right here on the Commanders Report, so click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, go raise some hell.